From He-Man to Pac Man. An alternative guide to growing up in the 1980s. Written by Peter Nuttall. Introduction. Ooh, the 80s, you hear people saying. Ooh, wasn't it just the best decade ever? Well, maybe you don't hear those exact words, but wherever you look these days, there's some misty-eyed nostalgia dressing up the period between 1st of January 1980 and the 31st of December 1989 as the best 10-year period since the 70s, and everything about it was colourful, fun and tingly. Yes, Police Academy was hilarious. Yes, Zippy as a concept totally worked, and Rubik's Cube stole many hours of our lives and never going back again, but was it really as good as you remember? Well, generally, yes it was, which is why I'll be looking back at a lot of the things that made the 1980s a great decade to grow up in. But I'll also be taking a look at the other side of the neon leg warmers, the things that were a bit weird or plain awful. If you grew up in the 80s, you'll fit into one of two categories. You're either someone who desperately wanted a Mr. Frosty and never got one, or you someone who got one and couldn't believe how unutterably crap it was, and wrote to the Grattan catalogue for a refund. I've catered for both here, with memories of the amazing memories of the incomprehensible and sometimes possible explanations for bizarre things that you can't believe actually existed, such as finger mouse and candy shrimps and pink custard, button moon, pop-up pirate and manimal. Come with me now as I take you on a journey through the food, the movies, sweets, toys, TV, fashion, adverts and random stuff of the 1980s, without ever mentioning Bruce Willis's pop career. Apart from just then. Television. With only 3 channels to choose from at the start of the decade, it was very much you get what you're given, and like it. This might account for why some adverts were inexplicably popular and why everyone in the country knew who the Crankies were. Channel 4 appeared in 1982 and brought us what we'd been waiting for since the invention of television. Countdown. The 4 channels, much like the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse, brought much to fear into our living rooms, mostly Dallas and Dynasty, but also EastEnders and Brookside, so things weren't all bad. Growing up in the 1980s, though, meant cartoons, people in colourful outfits shouting at us to make things out of old fairy liquid bottles, the big white ones with the red cap, and making us listen to an old saggy cloth cat. Bagpuss. There were only ever 13 episodes made of Bagpuss. However, because it was a repeated ad infinitum at lunchtimes, and I had a shocking short-term memory, it felt like 130. The shop that Bagpuss lived in didn't sell anything, a lot like the shops on the high street these days. A little girl would come by every now and then and leave lost and broken things in the window so that their owners could come and collect them. Once she left, the shop became a bit like Toy Story in that all the stuff in there came to life. A frog with a banjo, a doll with a face like she just sat on a hairbrush, and a stuffy wooden woodpecker, the irony, who spent the entire time whining about the mice who had creepily climbed out of the 2D pattern on the fireplace. Bagpuss, like any manager, sat around yawning, not doing much, barking orders at his staff, and then took all the credit once the item that they were working on had been fixed. He'd then do a huge yawn and go back to sleep and send all the things that had come to life back to being lifeless, disaffected statues with no discernible purpose or personality. The plot would have been much the same had it been set in my local branch of KFC. Button Moon. A wonderful tale of irresponsible parenting, this. Mr. Spoon was so called because he had spoons for arms. Using this logic, my name would be Mr. Arms. He had a wife and a young daughter, but that didn't stop him from pursuing his extremely dangerous hobby of astronavigation, travelling to a 2-dimensional moon made of huge yellow button upon which various creatures made out of kitchen utensils lived. The suspicious thing is that it was Mrs. Spoon who made the rocket in which her husband travelled to the moon.